Hey guys, welcome to your channel. We are going to discuss a very important topic from international relation. From diplomatic relation, you can say the topic is nothing but the repeated sanctions of USA on India on three different circumstances. And the most noticeable thing is that each sanction actually implies many diplomatic relations. There are various political and diplomatic implications behind each sanction. If we recover the behind the scenario background of each sanction, then we will get to find out to decipher many things, and that is why I am going to do actually. Right. See, first sanction is that US sanction on India from importing oil from Iran. And the root cause of this is the nuclear issue. Right, that Iran is increasing the nuclear enrichment behind civilian purposes, civilian use purposes. So here the issue is that, you see, though Iran agreed to come under the International Atomic Energy Observation, but the same has been denied by India. So irony is that India and USA has a very good relationship, and to some extent, though some animosity comes at present scenario between the countries, but to many extents, US and India is US and India is in very good terms. But though USA has sanctioned on Iran, despite Iran agreed to observe the international terms of nuclear enrichment, and despite she has signed a treaty. Right, but though India is a friend of USA, see the irony, India still has not signed the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. This is just a information to think over it, right? Just think on it, right? How diplomacy works in real terms, actually, right? So let's now coming to the point that when US has sanctioned on India from importing oil from Iran, then what will be the alternative solutions for India? And the most important thing is that when we try to find out this alternative solution, then we will recover a plethora of diplomacy. How? Because when US or India will not be able to import sufficient oil from Iran, then India has to find an alternative solutions to import oil from Iran, and this alternative solution will will indicate that how much India is maintaining a good relationship with other countries, who are well deposited in oil. That means what? When India will not be able to import sufficient oil from Iran, then India will have to find an alternative solutions. And finding alternative solutions, India will be able to fulfill that condition only when India will a good relationship with other countries. And when we say in our good relationship, that means what? It is obviously diplomacy, right? So alternative options for Middle East. That what will be the alternative options in Middle East for India? And when we say Middle East, what is the diplomatic relationship, or what is India's relationship with Middle East country like Iraq, Syria, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia? Right, we have to think over it. Right, in that you see Africa plus India. Then whether any chance for India to import oil from Africa? Right, what could be the measures? What could be the possibilities? In that you see Europe, especially Russia. Whether there will be any alternative to import oil from Russia? And India is Central Asia for India. When we say India has to find out alternative solutions, then when we say alternative solutions, then India will have to explore a kind of diplomatic relationship with these countries, with these oil-rich countries, when finding out an alternative solution for this. So you can answer all these things in relevant UPSC mains exam. And that means what? This prohibition of USA on India is actually actually brings out many implications for India, right? And India's alternative solutions to find out this oil crisis is actually dependent how much politically and diplomatically India is involved with all these countries. Sanction means what? Sanction means the purpose of sanction is to alienate a country from national and international scenario, attacking a country's economy. Right. So in this response of USA, how India will find an alternative solution for import oil from Iran will depended on how much India is politically and diplomatically involved in the countries from Middle East, Africa, Europe, and Central Asia. Coming to the another sanction, you see, USA is ready to impose a sanction on India if India buys S-400 missile from Russia. USA is going to impose this sanction under CAATCHA Act. CAATCHA stands for Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. Under this act, USA can sanction any on any country if that country deals with North Korea, Iran, and Russia in terms of high-profile defense and weapon technology. Keep it in mind. Then again, coming to the point that one way, if USA sanctions on India, then India will be prohibited from buying this missile. Not only prohibited, if India responds to USA in a warm way, then India will harm her relationship with Russia, with a country who is actually standing for India on very effective and time-bound occasions, time-effective occasions. Right, and if India does not respond to USA, then India will lose her one of the most important ally in the world at present scenario. So the dwindling situation is that whom in India will support or what India will do. This topic itself is a topic of international relation. While we explore whom India will support, then or what not support, yeah, what India should do, then we must have to explore that India's current relationship with both the countries in terms of major agreements, major bilateral relations, major treaties. Coming to the major treaties between India and USA, the one most important treaty is 123 agreement or nuclear agreement, Comcasa agreement or 2+2 dialogue regarding the sharing of military intelligence technology. Again, the recently coming into the news, Boeing P-8I. In that way, in terms of relationship between India and Russia, recently, Russia invited India to invest in far eastern region of Russia, and Russia is also going to open an office of Far East Agency in Mumbai. India and Russia have signed many agreements in terms of defense. India and Russia is going to cooperate in terms of space. Recently, ISRO and Russia's space company Roscosmos has decided to work on India's space flight called Gaganyaan. Right. Again, India and Russia is planning to install BRICS area in BRICS region a remote sensing satellite called BRICS Remote Sensing Satellite Constellation. Russia and India is going to cooperate in water transport through inland waterways and sea trade. Again, Ministry of Railway and Russian Railway is planning to decide in India an installation of single traffic control center. Again, both the countries are going to cooperate in transport as well as education. Right. So when we explore the relation, what India should do, then we must have to examine the relationship of India with both these countries in terms of all these aspects, and we have to weigh down each aspect. Then what India will lose or what India will gain in supporting of any country unilaterally. Right. It looks like a Cold War for India. That who will support India? Whom India will support like the Cold War? The most effective solution is that to take a middle way like India taken in the time of Cold War. Because if we weigh down each terms, each agreement, then if India will loses even a single agreement, then it will be a very great antithetical measure to India. India will lose many things. Right. So India have to very tactfully work on it. India should not disappoint in any country. Rather than India should find out a middle way. Then coming to the third restriction, generalized system of preferences. responding to the e-commerce law in India, which prohibits Amazon, Flipkart, etc. up to some extent in Indian market, US has restricted US has imposed generalized system of preferences on Indian commodities. What does GSP means? GSP means a kind of preferential trade condition under which developed countries give concessional benefits or duty-free tariff to the developing countries. When developing countries export their commodities to developed countries, then developed countries give a duty-free tariff on those import from the developing countries. It actually boosts the domestic market of the developing countries, boost export of the developing countries. That means it is a kind of preferential trade, or it is a kind of boost given by developed countries to the economy of developing countries. Here another important point you have to remember is it is not the most favored nation status, right? Most favored nation status comes under WTO trade agreement, but GSP does not come under WTO trade agreement. This is important for pre and mains as well, right? So when India loses the GSP from US, India will substantially lose the economy, mainly in terms of export. So it will eventually it will eventually invite some kind of gloomy aspects to domestic production in India. So what India can do? There are some alternative options India can do here. India can search for another countries who can provide GSP like Japan, Australia, etc. Right, then India can make efforts to boost the domestic production throughout innovation of technology, throughout policy making. It is obviously a long-term initiative. Then what other India can do? India can take help of US-China trade dispute. Right, the ongoing trade dispute between USA and China. Is there any chance to involve with Chinese trade in this point? Strengthening regional trade forum like BBIN, BIMSTEC, etc. India should try to focus more on regional forum and should develop regional market. More focus on Indo-Pacific trade connecting East. So much as India will develop, so much as India will involve in Indo-Pacific, it will give opportunity to India to deal with the Southeast Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries. So it will eventually help in the economy of the economy as well as domestic sector and export sector of the country. So these are just some possible alternatives India can take. This topic is important. You can find in one or another way, though not directly, but you can put such kind of points in any answer, even in economy. So be prepared for that. I will come again with another video. Till then, take care and bye bye.